Okay, truth time. This video is gonna be embarrassing for me. And I think it's probably gonna make some people really not like me and judge me, and that's scary. Who knows if anyone will even see this, so does it really matter? But anyway, this is a video about how I am a failure in life. I've wasted my 20s and pretty much wasted my life so far, and how I got here, and maybe a little bit of what I plan to do about it, although honestly I have no idea what I plan to do about it. I haven't scripted any of this. I have a rough idea in my head of what I want to talk about, but I think I'm gonna forget a lot of it probably, so maybe there will be some added context from editing Hexa in this. But anyway, let me just start from the beginning. A month or two I made this video talking about basically how I have fallen victim to consumerism culture and how I'm kind of broke and in search of happiness and failing to find my happiness, and how really I just want to run away from my life and live in Greece. That was kind of what the video was mostly about. Hasn't gotten a lot of views, but it got one really nice comment on it that made me realize that I want to be more authentic. This whole YouTube thing is my biggest dream. This is what I want to do with my life, but I will burn out if I don't do it from a place of authenticity. And I think for basically my entire time on YouTube, I've been pretending. There's this concept, especially around like when you're making educational content, which is kind of part of what I want to do, right? I want to make content that is about self-improvement. And there's this concept within educational content that you can either be the guide or the guru. The guru is the person who has already achieved the greatness and is now teaching others to do the same. You might think of someone like Ali Abdaal, right? He's a guru. He already has a multi-million-dollar business, and he's already a successful YouTuber, and he's doing really well for himself, so now he's kind of a guru. But once upon a time, he was a guide. He wasn't always a big YouTuber, and he kind of took us along for the ride. I've been trying to pack myself up neatly like a guru, even though I'm actually nowhere near there. I've been trying to smooth out appearances so that it seems like things are going okay for me. But actually, it just isn't true. And I think I've been trying to appear better than I am because it's embarrassing to be where I am now. But maybe I'm ready for my guide era. Maybe this like honesty will make me more relatable to people and will ultimately be more helpful, really. So I'm entering my era of trying to tell the truth, trying to be authentically me, even if authentically me is cringy and embarrassing. So yeah, truth time. Hi, my name is Hexa. I'm 26 years old. I live with my mom. I don't pay rent. I don't pay for food. I don't have a job. I don't have any savings. I pay for my own health insurance. I pay for my own credit card debts. But that's about it. My entire life is paid for and sustained by other people. I would not survive without the financial help of other people. I'm trying to make it as a content creator and an entrepreneur because I don't have any higher education. I can't afford higher education right now. I don't think it's the right fit for me right now either. There was a time when I wanted to go to college and it wasn't possible for me at that time, and the more the time has gone on, the more I realize it maybe just wouldn't have been the right thing for me anyways, because I have anxiety, I have ADHD, I have mental health issues. I've never functioned well in like the normal context of life. I've always just been like a little weird, a little out of step, kind of rebellious, kind of oppositional to authority. And I also have just a very strong sense of justice. And I feel like working 9-to-5 jobs in today's society, there's so much exploitation, and I don't want to live like that. And I also just don't think it would be good for me. I think I would burn out, and I think I wouldn't be happy. and so I don't want to do it. But I'm also embarrassed because just because I don't want to do it shouldn't mean that, you know, other people have to be responsible for me to no end while I try to build my own business and my own source of income. So that's kind of embarrassing. That's kind of cringe. That's the cringy part. But let's get into how I got here. So this is the backstory. How did I end up as an unemployed, penniless 26-year-old living with my mom in Germany? Let's get into it. I'm from Romania. I was born in Romania, but I grew up in China. We moved to China when I was 3 years old, and we left when I was 20. I went to international school. I grew up around a lot of very wealthy, very privileged people. We were never like really wealthy. My mom is a teacher. The reason why I was able to go to a fancy, expensive, private international school was because my mom taught in the kindergarten division of that school. So my tuition was paid for through her contract. But, you know, otherwise we wouldn't have been able to afford for me to go to that school. That was the only reason why I was there, why I could afford to be there. So I was around a lot of very wealthy people. And we lived in a really nice house, especially when I was older. When I was in primary school, we lived in a smaller place in an apartment, and then my parents got divorced right after my sister was born, and me and my mom and my sister and my dog, we moved into this big house. My mom wanted the feeling that we had like leveled up, you know, that we were moving forward with our lives. And it was really nice. It was a really nice house. And I was really, I really enjoyed living there. Can't say I was happy because I was not very happy during my teenage years, but we lived in a nice house. I wanted to add a little bit more context here because I think it's relevant. That year when my parents got divorced, we actually, like me, my mom, and my sister, we actually moved back to Romania for a year. We stayed with my grandparents for a few months until my mom got a job, and then we moved to our apartment in Bucharest. And that whole year that we spent in Romania, it was pretty much me, my mom, and my sister sleeping in the same room, and my grandma sleeping on a mattress on the floor in the living room in a really small apartment. And, you know, we went from a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment in Shanghai to this really teeny tiny, bare bones, bare minimum kind of apartment where, you know, I no longer had my own room or any of this stuff. So I think part of the reason why my mom wanted to move us into this big house when we did move back to Shanghai was because in some sense she felt bad for all of us that we had had such a difficult year and that our standard of living had seemingly dropped to such like bare bones so quickly. And I guess she wanted to spoil us and to give us back that feeling of like luxury and abundance in our lives. The thing about growing up in China that a lot of people don't realize is as a foreigner, you cannot work in China. You cannot get a work visa to work in China unless, you know, you're really special. You're really talented, you're really unique, you're an expert in your field. You have to have higher education, you have to have a certain number of years of experience. You essentially have to be able to prove to the Chinese government that you are capable of doing a job that a Chinese worker would not be able to do. You know, you have to, in order to get a work visa to work in China, you have to have a set of skills that makes you valuable and unique enough to be worth giving you as a foreigner the opportunity to take a job away from, you know, a potential Chinese employee. Which of course means that most of the foreigners who live in China are paid fairly well, but it also means that as a teenager who is the child of a foreigner working in China, you can't just get a work visa. You can't just get a summer job. You can't just go and flip burgers at McDonald's during your school holidays to make your own money or work as a barista at Starbucks. You can't get the visa to do that. So being that I lived in China from age 3 until 20, I was never able to work as a teenager and get like a summer job. I was never able to, even after I became an adult from 18 to 20, I still couldn't work because I didn't have the higher education or the skill set necessary to be able to get a work visa. I did some work, I made some money, you know, but it was just like, it was gig work. It was never anything consistent. I did some modeling, I did some singing, I did some teaching English, but it was never anything consistent. And the funny thing is, when I was a teenager, I really wanted to work. If I could have gotten a job like after school or whatever and made my own money, I would have absolutely loved to do that, because at that point in time, like throughout my teenage years, me and my mom did not have the best relationship. I was going through a lot of stuff. I was a very problematic child, and I was really angry and really frustrated. And I also felt very like controlled. Most of my friends had parents who were kind of neglectful and very permissive. Most of my friends got a lot of pocket money and were allowed a lot of unsupervised time to do all sorts of crazy things, and their parents didn't really keep tabs on them. People were like going clubbing and drinking and coming home at like 11 p.m. when they were like 14. It was insane, and they were doing it all on their parents' dime from, you know, pocket money or sometimes even credit cards that were paid for by their parents for their kids. I was not raised that way. And of course at the time I resented it, right? Because I felt like the odd one out. I had a very, very small, very meager amount of pocket money. I wasn't allowed a smartphone until years after all my friends already had one. I wasn't allowed on social media until years after all my friends already had Instagram accounts and stuff like that. And so as a teenager, I would have loved to make my own money so that I could have more choices, so that I could buy things without having to ask my mom, and so that I could take a taxi somewhere to go out with my friends and like pay for a meal and whatever. But I never had enough pocket money for any of that, and I was not able to have a job, so I couldn't do any of those things. And there was a lot of anger and a lot of resentment, and for most of my teenage years I just thought, the first chance I get, I'm gonna get a job, I'm gonna make my own money, and I'm gonna get away from my mom, because we were not on good terms. And you know, here I am 10 years later, 26, still living with her. So that's kind of ironic. When I was 18, when I finished my, you know, end of high school exams, I applied to a university in Germany. It was a music school. My mom had actually found it and recommended that I applied to this university. I applied for, it was a 4-year degree program in performance arts for singing. I applied, I was accepted. There was a place for me, but then I realized actually I couldn't afford to go there. We couldn't afford for me to go there. My whole childhood, nobody ever talked to me about money. No one ever taught me about money, about savings. I didn't know anything about anything in regards to money. I didn't know how much my mom was making, how much our house cost, how much life costs. But at my school, they were always talking about fancy private universities in the US, in the UK, in Australia, in Canada. Everybody was talking about, oh, I'm gonna go to the University of Southern California. I'm gonna go to UBC. I'm gonna go to Central St. Martin's and study fashion design. I'm gonna go to blah, 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 whatever, insert expensive private university here. I wanna mention that this is one of the major downsides of private international schools. The school's reputation essentially hangs on how good the universities are that their students are able to get into, right? So there's very much a push to get students to apply and be interested in prestigious universities, most of which are very expensive. And because most of the students do come from generally pretty wealthy families, there isn't a lot of guidance or even conversations around budget, how you're gonna pay for university. They don't talk to students about that. They just assume that your parents can afford it. As a European, I don't come from a culture where it's normal to take out massive loans for higher education. Most Europeans just don't do that. Granted, most Europeans also have some type of opportunity for free university in their own country or in the European Union, but that requires certain language skills, which international school students don't always have. And again, because you don't have the opportunity to gain work experience and to really like get used to hustling and grinding, you don't build up the fortitude to be able to study full-time and work part-time or full-time. And again, a lot of the people that I went to school with had parents who not only could afford to put them through school, but to also pay for, you know, their apartments so that they could live near campus and not have to worry about the money for the entire duration of their studies. And international schools, I think, don't necessarily always take into consideration the possibility that some of their students are not from such wealthy backgrounds that that is a realistic path for them. They're mostly just concerned with getting you to apply for and be accepted into the best possible, most famous possible university so that they can put it in, you know, their success stats that such and such percentage of their students get into Ivy Leagues or whatever the case may be. And those were the kinds of universities that came and sent representatives to our school to talk to us, to give us brochures and you know, try to lure people to apply to their universities. And because I was at that school with those people who were applying to those universities and no one ever talked to me about money, I just kind of assumed, oh, I'm here, I'm around these people, I'm with these people, of course I'm gonna go to one of these kinds of universities the same as everybody else is talking about going to, right? Like, of course, we're all here together. I'm gonna end up going to some private university. It's cool. Didn't really think about the money, didn't really worry about the money. Nobody ever talked to me about the money. It was just as if it was a given that I would be able to do that. Because I always just kind of assumed there's savings for me somewhere. Like, of course, I wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be talking about university for me if that wasn't actually gonna happen, right? But yeah, after I got my acceptance to this university, to this music school, and I talked to my mom about it, I realized, oh, there actually isn't money for me. If I want to go here, I have to go get a job and work and pay my own way through school. And I had no idea how I was gonna do that. I still don't know how I would do that. I still don't know. I have no concept of what university is like. I think I just like assume university is like school. It's like you work or you go to school from like 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. or whatever. And I thought, wow, going to school from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and then going to work after that. And Germany's expensive, like rent is expensive and I don't want to live with roommates and I've never had a job. And I realized actually I can't do this. I can't go to university. There's no money for me to go to university. When I was 20, I received the savings that my mom had put aside for my education ever since I was little. It ended up being, I don't remember the exact amount, but I think it was about 5,000 euros. I was initially not gonna touch that money because I knew in my head once I started spending it, I would not be able to stop because I was not the best with money. Initially, my plan had been that I was going to use it to buy a car, but then I ended up needing a new laptop. And this was like genuinely, I needed a new laptop. It was on its last leg. And so I used about half of the money to get the new laptop, a little more than half. And then with what was left, this was after we moved to Germany. So when I was 20, we left China and we moved to Germany. And I spent the rest of the money on just clothes and makeup and fun things because it was the first time in my life basically that I had money and I just couldn't control myself and didn't know anything about finances at that point. If I knew then what I know now, I would have been like, oh, I'll just put this into a high yield savings account or into the S&P 500 or something. But at the time, I just didn't have the financial education or the presence of mind to do anything better with that money than just spend it on frivolous things. And in my head, it was just like, well, it's just 5,000 euros. It's not gonna go very far for reaching bigger life goals. So once I had my laptop, it was just like, let's just have some fun. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself, backpedaling a little bit, because there was some stuff that happened in between. When I was 18, I started struggling with anxiety. I had had tons of mental health problems before, depression and eating disorders and all that, but never anxiety, never panic attacks that I knew of. Actually, looking back, I have had panic attacks before then, but I didn't know they were panic attacks, and the anxiety was not severe enough that it affected my daily life. But when I was 18, I started having anxiety and panic attacks that did affect me badly. And that was another period in my life where I let a lot of opportunities get away from me. This is the part that I had control over, and I take some of the blame, because things could have been better for me if I had persevered and pushed through the anxiety, but at the time I just felt like I couldn't. So when I was almost 19, when I was 19-ish, I had the opportunity to do a makeup course to become a licensed makeup artist at the Makeup Forever Academy in Shanghai. My mom paid for it. I went for a couple weeks and I was having panic attacks every single day. After a few weeks, I just fell apart mentally and I couldn't do it anymore. So I had to drop out. We got some of the money back, and for the next more than a year, I barely ever left my house. My boyfriend at the time broke up with me. I was really suffering. It was a really weird thing, because like I'm a singer, right? I was used to being on stage, singing in front of hundreds of people, and I loved it. It gave me power. It drove me. And suddenly, I was afraid to leave my house. I was afraid to leave my house. I was afraid of throwing up in public, fainting in public, needing a bathroom and not having access to one. I had severe health anxiety. I was constantly calling my doctor, going to the doctor. I even got an MRI because I was convinced that I had a brain tumor. If I had a cramp in my leg, I thought it was a blood clot. I had heart palpitations, which were caused by the anxiety, which I of course thought was, again, some kind of like really severe cardiovascular issue, because that's what health anxiety does, is you become hyper aware of every sensation in your body and you blow it out of proportion, and you're afraid of yourself perpetually. Like, I felt like a ticking time bomb. I couldn't take a shower when I was home alone because I was afraid that the steam would make me pass out or I would slip and I'd just be like unconscious, dying on the bathroom floor, home alone with nobody there to like notice that I was in the bathroom for too long and like call an ambulance. That's literally what was preoccupying my mind for essentially the first several years of my adulthood. So at that point, since we had already touched on the subject of, well, I can't afford to go to university, then it became, it doesn't matter that I can't afford to go to university because anyways, I am too mentally ill to go to university. There's no way that I can live an independent life like this when I'm too afraid to even leave my house. And that's pretty much the state that I existed in from the time I was like a little before my 19th birthday until we left Shanghai. So when I was 20, in the summer of 2018, we left China. I was still dealing with panic attacks. I was still dealing with agoraphobia, emetophobia, all the phobias. Before moving to Germany, we spent the summer in Romania. This is another place where money was spent on me. I wasted it. Bad decisions were made and it left me in a worse position. That summer in Romania, I was supposed to get my driver's license. My mom paid for me to get my driver's license. I did several driving lessons, practical lessons, driving around for an hour at a time or 45 minutes, whatever it was. And I was doing okay, you know, I was doing okay, slowing down for birds a little too much according to my driving instructor, but like I was doing fine. I didn't have a huge amount of anxiety about driving, but I had anxiety about other things in relation to the driving and the getting of the driver's license. that ultimately became a hindrance. One thing was that it was very stressful because I felt like once I was in the car with the driving instructor doing my driving lesson, I felt like I wasn't allowed to stop. I felt kind of claustrophobic in a sense. Like if I want to pull over and take a break, I'm not allowed to because I'm not supposed to, and my driving instructor is gonna get annoyed. That kind of thing. So that was one source of anxiety, of feeling like I was trapped in this car and I wasn't allowed to pull over, I wasn't allowed to stop, and I felt very out of control. Another thing was the idea of the exam, because at this point, again, I was 20, I hadn't taken any exams, any written exams since I was 18, and I finished my end of high school exams. It had been a couple years, and the last time I had to do an exam, I did not yet have crippling anxiety, but now I did have crippling anxiety, and the thought of I have to go inside this room and I have to write this test and I'm not allowed to leave the room until I finish the test, and what if I get nauseous? What if I need the bathroom? What if I feel like I'm gonna pass out? I can't leave the room. I'm gonna fuck it up. I'm gonna blow the test. Everything's gonna be terrible. It's gonna be embarrassing. I'm gonna be trapped in this room, essentially, if I do this test to get this license. That was the part that scared me. It wasn't the driving. I wasn't afraid that I was gonna like lose my mind and hit someone, which some people do have that fear, right? Some people have this chronic fear of hitting someone, running someone over with their car or whatever. I didn't have that fear. I had a decent level of confidence in my ability to drive safely, but I felt like I was gonna be trapped in the exam room, and I was trapped in the car with my driving instructor, and I wasn't allowed to leave. So after a few lessons, I stopped going, and I didn't finish getting my license. And the thing I didn't know then, which I wish I knew, is that once you move to Germany, Germany has a law, right? If you already have a driver's license from another European Union country, then you're allowed to drive in Germany with that license. Maybe you have to take like an extra test or whatever, but for the most part, no issues, right? If you have a pre-existing driver's license from the EU, probably also from other countries, you can drive in Germany with it, no problem. I looked into this driver's license thing just to double check the facts. You do have to get your license reissued in Germany. So if you already have a driver's license from another country, you have to, within the first 6 months of living in Germany, you have to go and like get a German driver's license printed and issued to you. I'm not sure how difficult the procedure is, but I don't think it's very complicated. You might have to retake the test or do like the practical driving test once, but you don't have to do any like extra lessons or anything like that. But if you don't have a license and then you move to Germany and you register as a resident in Germany and you have lived officially, legally in Germany for more than a year or something like that, you are now obligated to get your driver's license in Germany. You no longer are allowed to get your license in a foreign country and still drive in Germany with that license. In Romania, getting a driver's license is like, I don't know, 500 euros. In Germany, getting a driver's license now costs something like 3,000 euros. It's a lot of money. So I missed my window of opportunity back then to get a driver's license. I still don't have a driver's license. I don't have the money for a driver's license, and it is another one of the things that keeps me stuck. And I think those two things, like the makeup school and the driving school, really did a number on my confidence in myself to ever be able to see something through to the end. And I just no longer wanted to risk, you know, spending a bunch of money on higher education or on doing something or starting something and not finishing it. I had already wasted so much money and time and blown a bunch of opportunities, and now it feels insurmountable to put myself in that position again of starting something, because I just feel like, no, I fucked it up the last time, I'm gonna fuck it up again, and I just don't want to. But so that brings me to my life in Germany so far. So I landed in Germany at the age of 20. No money, because I've never lived in a country where I had the legal right to work. No driver's license because I fucked it up. No makeup artist certification because I fucked it up. Still dealing with agoraphobia and severe anxiety and panic attacks, still not leaving my house, and now there was a language barrier. And I felt like an idiot ever since I've moved to Germany. I speak English, Romanian, and Mandarin. You know, now as I get older, the more I think about it, the more I realize none of that is on my own merit. Like, I don't speak English, Romanian, and Mandarin because I'm super smart and great at languages. It's because I grew up in the right context that gave me that opportunity to learn those languages. But nonetheless, it is something that people admire and people look at you in a positive light when you speak a bunch of different languages. 3. I mean, come on. Whatever. It's not that many, but Chinese people are like really, really friendly towards foreigners who speak any amount of Chinese, and I spoke Chinese quite well and without an accent because I moved there when I was so young, so my pronunciation was always a lot better than most other foreigners. But when I moved to Germany, none of that mattered because I didn't speak German. If you don't speak the language of the land, there's nothing cool or interesting about you, you know? You're just another foreigner who hasn't integrated yet. And it's also like, again, truth time. Being a foreigner in China comes with privilege. You might call it white privilege. It is, in a sense, white privilege, but any foreigner, regardless of their race, in China has that privilege of being perceived as wealthy and just being treated very well. Because generally, most foreigners in China are wealthy and have a lot of buying power, and you get treated very well. Chinese people also just really love to be hospitable and to present their country and their culture in a positive light to foreigners. So they're very polite, very helpful, very willing to assist you, even if you don't speak any Chinese. They're just amazing and they treat foreigners really well. When I moved to Germany, I did not have the same experience. And that's not to say, like, there are a lot of German people who are very, very kind. And I've met a lot of German people who have really supported me and encouraged me in my efforts to learn the language and all of that kind of stuff. But at the same time, coming to Germany was my first time where me and my family and people who look like us, white people of all things, experienced xenophobia, which was crazy, you know? Okay, watching this back, I realized how non-PC it sounds, so let me just clarify. What I mean by that is that racism and xenophobia against people of color is well documented. We know that this is a problem in our society and it's talked about a lot, and obviously nobody, regardless of their race or ethnicity or nationality, should ever have to face that kind of discrimination based on those factors. But the reason why it was so shocking and surprising to me is because so much of our kind of global understanding and perception of racism is based on American culture. It's very American centric. But what a lot of Americans don't realize, and what a lot of people with an American centric view and understanding of racism don't realize, is that there is a lot of xenophobia within Europe of white people against other white people, especially when it comes to Eastern Europeans, people from former Soviet or former communist parts of Europe, and for some Southern European countries with weaker economies such as Greece, Italy, and Spain. If you move to a wealthy country like Germany from a country like Sweden, the Netherlands, Austria, Switzerland, European countries that have good economies, you're perceived more positively than if you come from Eastern Europe or Southern Europe. And as a longtime resident in China, where I was treated very, very well as a foreigner, it was a little bit of a shock to the system. It was my first taste of xenophobia and discrimination as a white person, and it's not really discussed ever, so it was very unexpected. In China, we were foreigners, and that was good because you're thought of as rich and privileged and pretty. And in Germany, we're kind of not the bad foreigners, but the foreigners who are really lucky to be here. You know, being Eastern European, being Romanian in Germany, it's like, oh, you came to Germany from the bad side of Europe and you're lucky to be here. and it's your job to do everything you can to integrate, to fit in, because you should feel lucky to be here. You've escaped some horrible, shitty Eastern European country to be here. That's the perception, right? And we had these like kind of little experiences of microaggressions where people would hear my mom speaking English or Romanian to my sister in public and approach her and tell her that she should speak German with her child so that we would learn the language faster and like integrate better. I've had a lot of experiences with people telling me that I don't look Romanian. Just the ignorance blew my mind. But anyways, suffice it to say, I found it really difficult to thrive, and I felt I was very angry and frustrated, and I felt belittled. And Germany is a really great country to live in. Like, don't get me wrong. It's quite safe. There's the health insurance is amazing. There's a lot of social support and a lot of opportunities to make it in this country. But at the same time, I was already struggling with so many other things. And then suddenly there was this language barrier, and it wasn't my choice to move here, and I didn't get to choose. And it's not that I wouldn't have chosen Germany, but it's just that it was out of my control completely in every possible way. And it's like my whole life, my whole adulthood was other people choosing things for me, because I just had so few opportunities to make my own path in life. I think what I mean with this is just that it felt very much like starting completely from scratch. If we had moved to a country where I could at least speak the language, then I would have at least felt like I had a leg to stand on. As someone who is quite talkative and I think generally a good communicator and was fairly well educated, at least at the high school level, I took a lot of pride in being able to talk to people and being able to express myself. And because we landed in a place where my communication skills became obsolete, that was a really hard blow. It really just felt like being stripped of my identity and not being able to communicate my identity, not being able to communicate anything about myself, and being judged by factors that I had no control over. I could no longer tell people who I was, what my thoughts were about anything. I was just a foreigner who couldn't speak the language. So yeah, it felt like starting from scratch completely. And it felt like everything that I had learned and the fact that I had gone to this fancy private school and all of those things just completely didn't matter anymore. Honestly, I think it was a hit to the ego more than anything, but it did a surprising level of damage. When you're raised around prestige and privilege, not having that anymore feels like a fall from grace. It sounds very like poor little rich girl, but you know, I was just completely unprepared for it. The feeling of being an outsider and not even a desirable outsider. That was hard. The first time I went to the hospital in Germany, you know, to register at our local health center, tell them that I'm here, I live here now, I exist here now, I need a doctor here. I went and I told them, you know, I have a history of mental health issues and I need a therapist, and is there any support here for helping me find a therapist? And they told me, if you want a psychotherapist in Germany, you have to learn German first, because there's no way you're gonna find a therapist to treat you if you don't speak German, which for someone who's already dealing with depression and anxiety was not helpful and also not true. I guess partially true, because it was very, 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 very difficult to find an English-speaking therapist who was covered by my insurance. But yeah, so 2018 kind of went by. We came in the summer. We landed in Germany in August of 2018. In May to June of 2019, I spent 4 weeks in a psych ward because I had been trying to find a therapist for that entire year and I couldn't find one. And the only way that I was given to get mental health help was by checking myself into a psych ward. So I checked myself into a psych ward, stayed there for 4 weeks, was put on medication. The entire time, I got less than an hour probably of actual therapy. We did art therapy that was it was nice, but it was completely unguided. I didn't really see the point of it. It felt like they took me in as a patient even though they didn't have the resources to actually help me with anything, and I shouldn't have been there. I got more help from like the community, the sense of community and like the other patients than from the actual medical staff. And after I got checked out of that facility, after 4 weeks, I started experiencing the side effects of the medication that they put me on, because remember, antidepressants, they take about 3 to 4 weeks to actually start kicking in and like changing your brain chemistry. And unfortunately, whatever they put me on made my emotions more unregular and out of control. I ended up having a crying meltdown in my psychiatrist's office. They put me on a different medication, which also was bad. Whatever, I don't want to get into that. But anyway, the first year and a half in Germany was rough. It was a lot of like trying and failing to get proper mental health support. In October of 2019 to March of 2020, I worked in a local supermarket for 4 hours a day, Monday to Friday. So I got a part-time job, and that was, I mean, that was like my first real job, basically. It wasn't even a real job because it was just part-time, but that was my first real job, where I was actually a real, like, contracted official employee. It was okay, but every single day I was battling anxiety. Like, I had constant stress, constant anxiety. I couldn't sleep. I had the worst insomnia I've ever dealt with during those like 5 months that I worked there, because every single night I was just laying in bed and stressing, like, I have to fall asleep, I have to fall asleep, I have to wake up early tomorrow morning, why can't I fall asleep? I'm gonna be so tired tomorrow at work if I don't fall asleep right now. And I just could not fall asleep. And some of my coworkers had been working there for like 30 years, and I just thought, oh my god, if I stay here, I'm gonna be here for 30 years and I don't want to be here forever. So shortly before COVID hit Germany, I quit that job. Literally a week later, a week after I quit, everybody was wearing face masks. It was crazy. But that was the last job I had. I haven't had a job since then. So like since March of 2020, I've been making my money doing transcription work online. I've been doing some freelancing, some Fiverr stuff. So I started out mostly just doing community management. So like replying to comments for people on like TikTok and YouTube. If they have like a big following and they can't keep up with comments by themselves, I go in and I reply to comments for them. In 2022, I started offering product photography and UGC. And that was really crazy because in like the first month of doing UGC, I made $500. And this leads me to like where I am now, right? Because I'm 26, I'm not making a lot of money, but I'm making some. I know that if I were to try to do like an apprenticeship, you know, learn German better, do an apprenticeship for 3 years, and then go into a field of work, that would be a more certain way for me to be able to move forward with my life and like make a guaranteed income. But I don't want to do that. I still have issues with anxiety. I recently got diagnosed with ADHD, and now I know why it's so hard for me to fit into a traditional workplace. And I just feel like I don't want to try so hard doing the whole higher education thing for a job and a future and like a work environment that I don't even want. It would be one thing if I wasn't making any money, if I had tried all these things and none of them had worked out, but I have this like crazy kind of optimism, like maybe it's even detrimental to me, or maybe it's not. We'll never know until I get to the end of my life, or like maybe 10 years from now. If 10 years from now it's worked out, then the optimism wasn't crazy. But if 10 years from now I'm still where I'm at now, then like, you know, we'll know that this was all really fucked up to begin with and I should have just given up. But I've always been the kind of person who's like, okay, like last month I made like $50 on, or 50 euros on YouTube, and other people would look at that and be like, I've had this YouTube channel for 10 years and I'm only making 50 euros in a month. Like, it's time to call it quits. It's time to give up. I don't see things that way though. I see things as, oh, I just need to add 2 more zeros on the end of that, and then I'll be having the best life ever, right? If, and I look back to last year I was making more like 5 euros in a month from my YouTube channel. And it's like, wow, I have multiplied by 10 my monthly YouTube income in just 1 year. If that could happen once, maybe it could happen again. If I've multiplied it by 10 again by next year, and then again by the year after that, that's only like 2 years to get to being a full-time YouTuber. Like, this is amazing. And with the UGC as well, it's like some months I make 500 euros, 600 euros. Sometimes I go months without making anything. But those months when I do make a reasonable amount of money, it's just like, it just keeps me going. It's like proof of concept. It makes me feel like it's not working enough, but it's working a little. If it wasn't working at all, then maybe I could just give this all up and just say, it's never gonna work. I need to go, you know, get a full-time job in a supermarket or whatever, save up some money and like find a way to move myself forward through a traditional career path. But I have this unwavering belief that if I can make it work a little, then I can make it work a lot. I always say, like, I'm willing to work a little for a little or a lot for a lot, but I'm not willing to work a lot for a little. And I feel like right now I'm working a little for a little. You know, I don't have enough work to keep me busy all the time and I'm not earning a lot, but like the balance there of time spent to income earned, it's reasonable. It makes sense. But I don't know if I'm willing to put myself through like the mental stress and the struggle of like a 4-year degree program for a career that I don't even want, where I have to work in an environment that is not made for neurodivergent and mentally ill people to thrive in. And I keep like thinking, any day now it's gonna blow up. Like any day now the YouTube channel is gonna blow up and it's gonna start making me a lot of revenue, or I'm gonna start landing my dream UGC deals and working with brands that I love, making a ton of content all the time, and I'll get to do the thing that I love and get paid a lot to do it. Any day now it's gonna happen and I'll be able to catch up. You know, like I've wasted my 20s so far and I haven't been able to build up savings or go on the holidays that I dream of going on or like live the kind of life that I want to live. But if in the next 2 to 3 years I'm able to turn it around, if I'm able to make it into something, then I'll be able to catch up. But there is like a certain point where it won't be possible anymore to catch up. And so that I think is like what scares me, is what if it takes too long? Or what if I'm just watching myself in real time as I fall victim to the sunk cost fallacy? What if I should have given up already by now and I'm just stubbornly refusing to, and I'm only gonna realize it years and years down the line that this right now was when I was supposed to quit and go do something else to save myself from being broke and reliant on other people for the rest of my life, you know? Not to mention, like, I cannot be reliant on other people for the rest of my life. Other people are gonna lose patience, and I also don't want to be, you know? Like, I want to be able to support my mom when she retires and not be a burden. But so anyway, I guess that's the story so far. That's where I am. That's how I got here. And as for where I'm going, yeah, I'm trying to make this content creator thing work. I love doing product photography. I love doing UGC. I love making YouTube videos. I want this whole like content thing to be kind of like a little lifestyle business. I want to be creative for a living and have that be the thing that supports me. So yeah, that's the story so far. It's embarrassing. I feel like in my teenage years, I didn't have the opportunity to build up my own savings, and I didn't know enough about money to understand that maybe that would have been necessary. But even if I had known, there wasn't much I could have done about it in China. And when I was 20, we landed in a place that I didn't choose. That wasn't a bad place, but nonetheless, it was a place that where I felt judged, and I felt like everything that I had pride in or identified with up until that point just disappeared. You know, we moved from this huge bustling city to a tiny village in the middle of nowhere where I don't speak the language, and I felt very defeated. And ever since we've moved to Germany, so like the past 6 years, it's just been a lot of stagnation and trying to make things work, but not necessarily really trying hard enough or consistently enough, until I've kind of just ended up in this at this point it's self-imposed. A self-imposed isolation, dependency, inability, or even refusal to move forward and get on with my life. Maybe a bit of Peter Pan syndrome, not being willing to grow up. And like part of me is like, okay, but on the other hand, mental illness and those things were a very real factor and continue to be, and that was not my fault and it was out of my control. But also acknowledging that or even accepting that as truth doesn't help my situation, even if it is true, even if that is the reason, if it's all just because of anxiety or if it's all just because my mom didn't save up money for my education or whatever. Like blaming other people or external factors or factors that are outside of your control is not helpful. And I know it isn't true, but I still try to convince myself that like anxiety is just a feeling and it's my own fault if I let it control my entire life. But on the other hand, that is just beating myself up a little bit more than I deserve, I think. What it comes down to is really, I need to build a life that's gonna work for me, and I need to have like a clear end point where if it's still not working out and I'm still not making moves towards building a life that works for me, then I have to at the very least build a life, which I feel like right now I don't have. But wouldn't it be glorious if somehow out of this self-imposed doomscape and like failure and brokenness and trappedness and unemployment, I somehow actually succeed in the dream. That would be insane. So I'm entering my guide, not guru era. Radical honesty. This is me. This is where I'm at. Earning like 700-800 euros a month on average from my various online pursuits. Struggling to pay all of my credit card debts and health insurance and stuff every month. Borrowing money on a regular basis. Owing money to a lot of people and credit cards. And trying to dig myself out somehow on my own terms and not by being thrust unwillingly into a lifestyle and a career that I don't want. I hope in a few years from now, I'll be able to look back on this and say that I made it and be able to tell a completely different story about how my blind faith actually paid off. But I don't know yet. So for right now, this is just a really embarrassing video highlighting all of my failures so far at the age of 26. Cringe. But at the same time, I hope a lot of people see this. I don't think a lot of people will see this if we take my YouTube channel's history so far as evidence. But I hope a lot of people see this because truly I cannot possibly be the only one that has had an experience like this or is at this age that I'm at now and feels out of control of their own life, feels like a failure, feels behind, feels disappointed and guilty and like a burden and embarrassed and ashamed of how little they've accomplished. And yeah, I just hope this is relatable, comforting. I hope for everybody who is feeling behind in life that they find a way to catch up or find the version of happiness that is realistic and achievable for them, and that even if it doesn't make sense to anybody else, it makes sense for you and it makes you happy. I hope we can all find happiness, whatever that means for us. And I hope that in a few years from now, preferably in a few months from now, that I will be earning more than 700 or 800 euros in a month, because it is really not enough and I would love to have a little bit more money so that I can get another new computer, because the 2018 one that I bought has almost crapped out on me. And so that I can finally get my driver's license and a car so that I do not feel trapped in my location wherever other people happen to bring me to, blowing around in the wind like a plastic bag. Yeah, you know, I'm finally starting to realize, I'm finally starting to get educated about money. I still don't have any money, but I think I am starting to finally know the right things to do with money if I had it. And I'm finally starting to understand the importance of mobility and a car. Yeah, I'm just trying to find a way to achieve things like money and a car and a new computer through means that I do not hate. Wish me luck. And that is about all I have for you today because this video is already way too long and I'm rambling. So yeah, there's my embarrassing story of failure at the age of 26, and I hope I'll see you in a few years and be able to tell you that I'm no longer a failure. Leave a comment down below if you related to any of this, or email me in private if you don't want to comment it publicly. Let's chat. For more radical honesty and chaos baby self-improvement tips, that is me, the chaos baby, please subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye. I managed to film this video without crying, by the way. Yay me. I almost cried a couple times there, but made it through to the end without any actual full-blown tears.